Hey Tim, so what are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to talk about what I like to call moving out of the city. Right?
All right.
What I mean by moving out of the city is it's kind of like the term or the terminology I use when I think about a younger person, I don't know, maybe in their 20s or late 20s. Maybe they sort of have a job in the city and they live in the city and they have an apartment, and then oftentimes the way that life kind of works out is they'll have to kind of move out of the city.
Right.
Into, let's say, like the suburbs is the more, quote unquote classic, family lifestyle. And talking about that transition and that change that a lot of people go through, have gone through, or are going through.
Well, how do you see that?
Well, I see it as it's a tough change, right? I see it as hard, right? I think that, folks in their young 20s, kind of, I don't know, maybe like before they get married or before they have kids, they live this lifestyle that's kind of, I don't know, they really find themselves and they find their likes and their interests, and it's this whole big experience where people find themselves. And then, especially from what I've heard from others,
Sure.
That sort of being, quote unquote, taken away from them as they sort of have to, move out of the city, for example. I don't know, maybe they have a car that they love and they have a baby on the way and they know that they can't put their baby
in the
car
that they love
of a beautiful Camaro. And maybe they have to wrap their mind around the fact that they may have to get a Subaru Outback or something like that.
I wonder if we could put up that picture of what you're talking about up on the screen for people, because it's a beautiful machine.
Oh,
it's a beautiful machine.
All right, so for me,
right.
It's probably the fact that I'm gonna have to get rid of a car to put a car seat in it, right? And that hurts, but for a lot of other people, we're over here in New Jersey, right? Like maybe like moving out of like Hoboken, New Jersey, which is this kind of like really exciting, like small city with so much going on, to maybe like the suburbs where kind of lights out by 10 p.m. and it's not quite as exciting. So it's a challenging transition. I've clearly felt, and a lot of other people have felt it too. What are your thoughts on?
Well, first I want to say I hear you on that, because a lot of the conversations that I have, I'm a little older than yourself, so with this, I've gone through that transition earlier in a way, and also I work with a lot of men in their late 20s, early 30s, and sometimes you do hear whether they're saying it intentionally or unintentionally. It's like, well, I guess I have to take the next stage in life, right? It's not like, oh, wow, I get to like do this. It's sort of like you just in the run of things or how life goes. We use a lot of analogies, a lot of just like non-intentional verbiage, like, I guess the next stage is coming, or something like a like a non-intentional statement, which suggests like you're not really looking forward to this, are you? Because of this change idea that you're talking about. And I think for a lot of people, they get grounded, they like what they have, and then all of a sudden, for a variety of different reasons, they're gonna change, and now you have to adjust to something completely different. Plus, potentially having a baby on the way, or one or two, or buying a house. Right? For a lot of people, when this is their first time doing it, and maybe they don't have the help of somebody else to like walk them through it, it's a challenging time.
Yeah. I think I'm kind of I'm picking and pulling some things that you said. A lot of change.
Right.
We know that our brains just do not like change. Like we hate change, and with change always comes anxiety. A lot of folks have a lack of support, because there's a lot of work to make all of those changes, and some uncertainty about the future.
Right.
I always kind of joke, but I'm serious about it when I say, if there's a question mark about the future, our brain is always going to probably perceive like the worst case scenario or the negatives, right? So I think folks going through any transition in life, but especially this one, I would say that those are probably three pretty big themes that kind of lead to this challenging
agita,
right? And I guess I don't know. I guess I'm thinking like I guess I'm thinking it's important to normalize that.
Hmm?
Like, yeah, like on paper, these changes are really good changes, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that it always has to feel quote unquote good.
I like that. I like that. I like the idea that we could think of it one way, but maybe feel it different, and just acknowledging the fact that, yes, you might be looking forward to the next stage, and also potentially scary. Because I feel what a lot of people do, it's either or. It's either they're scared, I want to do it, this is terrible, or like they disregard those feelings and just go with the cognitive, and then there's like this internal discrepancy of what it's supposed to be while how the person feels. So I totally hear you on that. One thing that was coming up for me, at least when we started this conversation, is I also find, I don't know, a different type of a person, but just sometimes the conversations that I have with clients that maybe are less about the sacrifice and less about certain things that we just talked about, but more about discussing their values even when they were younger, just to sort of expand on what that might be like. Because maybe in your 20s or even teens or early 30s, the biggest value that you have is getting together with somebody, finding your significant other, right? Finding your identity, finding who you are, what you like, your profession, right? But to me, that doesn't mean it eclipses everything else, right? So I like to do a lot of value-based exercises where, wait a second, maybe you never thought about it, but let's think about how much you want to be connected to your partner. Let's think about, are you going, let's say for you and I, how much are you going to value fatherhood? How much are you going to identify as a provider? Do you want to settle back into a particular spiritual, religious element to yourself? Right? Just to kind of doing an inventory just of who you are as an individual. Because once, let's say you're living in the city, for like, let's say 10, 12 years, the idea of getting out there, doing things might eclipse some other parts of who you are.
Yep.
So a lot of my conversations are rebuilding, or I shouldn't say rebuilding, but tapping into those other parts of the individual. And once we could do it, then it's not so much about compromise. It's not about so much fear, but shifting set into almost like a positive expectation about, wow, I've experienced this part of my value set, getting out there, forming who I am. But now I'm eager to be able to, find myself as a father, or find myself maybe as, somebody who owns their home and taking care of that. Or maybe embracing myself back into my particular, spiritual, religious roots that I actually kind of neglected. But now that I think about it, it's actually a part of who I am. But like, so shifting it that way, to me, makes it a softer transition, because then you're moving away from compromise and into growing into something that either we're developing, like a new value, or reconnecting with an old value, which I think makes it easier for that transition to happen.
Yeah, thinking about it like the previous way, in the beginning of the conversation, it's sort of like, this is a drag.
Right.
I'm losing so much. I have to give up my car and everything that I love, and I don't know what the future is going to look like, and this is scary. Over to, well, yeah, like things are shifting, and your value systems will probably shift too, and you will probably value different things more,
right.
And you will find, it's very likely that you will find an immense amount of value
right.
in something that you previously didn't find
right.
value.
Exactly.
Right. So I guess that maybe to put it in a nutshell, you will feel fulfilled. It'll just look a little bit different.
A little bit different. It maybe, instead of moving away from, let's say some people would reference like a cheaper thrill of going out, having drinks, eating well, like whatever, staying up later, however the typical life could be like. Maybe now the value shifts. And now it's a qualitatively different satisfaction level. Which, again, I think, at least in therapy, when I talk about it, if we can acknowledge it earlier and just set it up earlier, then you don't have to go through the growing pains, right? You actually, instead of seeing it as a sacrifice, you're seeing it like, wow, I'm developing myself in another area of my life. So that kind of, and I know you like cognitive shifts, right? So to me, that cognitive shifts can make a huge difference between like, oh my God, gotta go to a soccer game, or oh my God, I have to like wake up earlier, to like, wow, it's interesting, I'm developing myself, let's say as a father, as a mother, or whatever the situation might be.
And just to add to that really quickly, I've heard a lot of people say like, going back to the past, like, I remember when, I didn't have to
Right.
do this or that,
Right,
the
right,
other, or the other thing, right? And I think that goes right along with, perhaps maybe not the most helpful mindset that we can have, where we're not kind of tuning into how those values can positively shift, and we can get that same enjoyment and fulfillment, or perhaps even greater.
Absolutely.
If we're sort of able to have our values like more removed, just a little bit.
Exactly. And it's, again, it could be either reconnecting with something that you've known about yourself before, or creating new ones. Growing up in larger cities all my life, I didn't know how much I like hiking. I didn't, because I didn't have an opportunity to do that. I would never have thought like, wow, like, well, one of the things that I love doing is that on the weekend. That was not part of at least my thinking, and just allowing yourself to do it, how to say preemptively, but having those thoughts or kind of conversations, maybe with your significant other, or even with yourself. Let me reconnect with that. Will make it much easier to make this, potentially significant transition in one's life.
Totally. Okay.
Last call. What are your thoughts?
Last call for me. I'm going to put it this way. The moving out of the city analogy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough part of your life.
Right.
It's hard. There's change, which leads to anxiety. There's uncertainty about the future, and there's a degree of loss there.
Right.
So I think that we should be normalizing the fact that, yeah, although these changes on paper are good changes, they can be emotionally challenging.
Of course.
And so normalizing that, and we're going to do it anyways, but normalizing those feelings that go along with these quote-unquote good changes.
I hear you. My last call would be, yes, that's true, and also spend some time tapping into your values. There's so many value journals out there that could help you say, I don't know what my values are. There's a gazillion things you could just go on any Google or whatever and try to find something that would work, that would potentiate some of it, and start thinking like, how can I expand my value set, increase it, or just tap into what you had, so that you could kind of pre-plan how that would look like for you, be it parenthood, be it living in a suburb, be it whatever the transition might be. What is the value that is potentially important to you, or that you could develop that would bring meaning to your life?
And just to add a little teeny tiny point to that, being open just to noticing them change.
Right.
And seeing what they change to,
right.
and leaning into it, right?
Right, absolutely. Because I think, as we talk a lot about this, having these preconceived cognitive notions get in the way. I know you and I had a conversation about hypnotherapy on the YouTube channel. I spoke to Gabrielle about intuitive eating, right? Basically, a big part of it is like our mind gets in the way. Let's try to move aside from that, tap into who we are. It sounds like intuitive eating improves, right? We want to talk about, like, let's say some sort of cessation or changing of something. Like hypnotherapy allows people to kind of tap into like that reservoir of information that we have. We're basically talking about the same thing. Allow yourself to be open to see what comes up and give yourself a chance to enjoy something different.
Yeah. And on that note, there's a little plug for our YouTube videos.
That's right.
We're talking about really good stuff.
That's right.
And we will say farewell and enjoy our YouTube videos if you want to go watch them.
That's right. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.